because I know one thing beyond the shadow of a human doubt is that when you let go and you're open to it and you allow it to rise up from within, it will always lead you to a better place. Always. The road might be a little rocky and it might not appear that way at first, but you do get there. Okay, so the question is, what's the difference between energy work, light work, and spiritual work? And they all have to do with opening up to deeper levels of unconditional love. And so what you need to keep in mind is that we're all on this ascension spiral. We're all in a growth pattern of some sort. And we've talked about in past conversations about how everything is vibrational. So it's either contractive or expansive energy. And so we're going to build off of that base. And a lot of the work that I do is geared towards helping people remember their divine soul purpose. What's their divine soul mission? And then how do I go about in fulfilling that? Because I am here for the ascension process. I'm here to assist humankind in this process of evolution. So let's build a stronger base to answer this so that you've got different lenses that you can look through. It's about building bridges. And we are right now, humanity is locked into such an us versus them otherisms, where it's, I've got my tribe, and that was kind of like the big catchphrase on the internet for a long time is find your tribe, find your tribe. But it's us versus them. And what that has done is it has reinforced this idea of being separate from each other. And so we've entered into the time of where we need to consciously understand how to build bridges. When we talk about energy work, light work, and spiritual work, it really depends on who is doing the talking, what's the context, and what's their intention behind it. Because, I mean, let's face it, words are containers that are really way too small. But words are what we have. Words and vibrational intention, until we get to the point that we can just do telepathy. And then won't that be marvelous? If we all understood that there really is no separation and that we were all in this together and that we are all a reflection of each other in some way, shape, or form, then the building of bridges is not necessary. But as long as humankind is locked into this collective conscious thought of us versus them, or the differences, then building bridges is necessary. And so the first bridge that you want to build is the bridge between your human ego intellect and that of your divine soul knowing. And that's the part of you that is consciously aware of your origin spark of infinite unconditional love. This is your origin spark of creation. And so when you build that bridge from here to here, now that means that you're letting go of all of the thoughts of your inner critic. You're letting go of all of those thoughts of I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I'm an imposter, I need to keep, parts of me secret from myself, I need to keep parts of me secret from the world, I want to be loved. And we've talked in other conversations about how we've been taught to look outside ourselves to have love reflected back so that we understand our value. That is the prevailing thought. And it's prevalent in that hamburger universe thinking where good is above, bad is below, and we're all scrambling in between. And so I get a measurement tool. I need to see, how do you feel about me for my self-worth? And that's right. That's kind of where the basis of what has been taught. So you want to let go of those thoughts and ideas of yourself that are really limiting and that in some way, shape, or form convince you that you're less than in some way, or too much of another is a less than. Okay. And so you build that first bridge down into the infinite unconditional love of you by releasing those ideas and just having an open mind and heart about what there's more to me. What is that? and you go into curiosity mode to discover that. And that's where people talk about the authenticity. And authenticity was a very big word for the longest time, and it still is. It's important. Be your authentic self. Okay. So anything that can get you closer to understanding the infinite unconditional love of you is a pass in the right direction. The second bridge is from your divine soul knowing to your human ego intellect. And that's where you do your stop. You've looked at what you're doing, you let go and you let love flow. You listen. That's part of that stopping process of you listen within, you feel into it, you relax into the unconditional love of you. Then there's that bridge. Okay. And then the next bridge would be you start to be more able to extend unconditional love, and that's empathy. And that's just giving love freely, no strings attached, whether it's received or not. And that will develop your empathy. And we've talked about empathy in other videos. And empathy is in and of itself a bridge builder of deeper understanding. And then ultimately you do get to the point that you're able to step outside of that paradigm of the hamburger universe and into the absolute unity of infinite unconditional love. And you realize that, wow, we really are in this together. And I am one part of a greater whole. Okay, so those are the different levels of bridges. So let's look at it within any organized religion. You have the initial container that is set up, that somebody who has never had any idea of a spiritual aspect of their nature. And when I use the word spiritual right now, I'm talking about something that is grander or greater than the human ego intellect. Some kind of power, some kind of higher power is a word that is often used for people that are in those earlier stages of waking up. And so for someone within the Christian faith, Jesus would be the higher power. Someone in the Muslim faith, it would be Muhammad or Krishna. Or within the Jewish faith, it's the teachings of their forefathers. So all of the great religions have their name and their aspect of what's a higher power. And that means just something that is bigger and greater beyond the human ego intellect, which is totally conditioned to live in a small container, a less than container. So those are the first, there's that first container that somebody steps in and it's all brand new. And then they start to look for the meaning within that. So for a while, they'll just parrot the words because they're kind of feeling into what are those words? What does it mean? How does this change my life? You go into the evangelistic mode, because you want more people to think like you do. The more people that think like you do, the more safe you feel. You kind of feel into what do those words mean? What do those concepts mean? How do I live them? And you kind of get into that good girl, good boy. I don't want to be the bad girl, bad boy. I want to be a good girl, good boy. And those are kind of those early stages of that. Then once that happens, then you relax into it more. And whatever that platform is, as soon as you open up your mind and your heart to something grander than the small idea of what your ego intellect has told you with its full-on inner critic, the mind and open heart is just enough that the unconditional love will show you the way, regardless of what framework that you're working from. What comes to mind is like a husband and wife arguing about what's the best way to get from point A to point B. And this road is faster. No, this road is faster. And they get in a huge argument and never even really leave home to hit the road. Who cares if one is 5 minutes longer or 10 minutes longer? What's important is that you get to that point B. So, okay. So there's this whole evolutionary process that happens as you slowly let go of the limiting thoughts that you had, and you go deeper into the infinite unconditional love of you. And I use the term divine light simply because of the car accident. Well, I had grown up in the Christian faith, and one phrase that had always struck me is don't hide your light, be your light. And I never really understood what that was. And so that car accident 35 years ago, where I was on the snowy interstate, and a car bumped into me, and I'm going 65 miles an hour. I bump into the other car. I realize this is a whole lot bigger than me. And I'm thinking, whoa, this is it. My time is over. And in that moment, I heard that incredible rush of infinite unconditional love rise up. And I heard this omnipotent voice that was equally everywhere present that said, let go. And it was so calm and so wise and knowing. I just let go. And literally took my hands off the wheel, took my feet off the pedal, which went totally against all of the training I'd ever had about driving on snow, of steering into the skid. And as my car is doing 360-degree turns and banging into other cars, and time slowed down, and literally everything emanated light. There was only infinite unconditional love, and everything emanated light. So I was very much aware of the physical world around me. I had time to really observe it, even my hands, and I understood what all the great sages in that moment were speaking of, where they said, we are one in the light, and only light is here, only light can come to us, because it is only unconditional love manifested in a material form. So this is why I use divine light vibrations. And I speak in terms of, so divine light, when I speak of that, I'm speaking that it is an infinite intelligence that knows all things because it created all things. An omniscient wisdom that knows how to manage all things for the highest good of all. And an omnipotent, all-powerful, unconditional love that can. So this is, all things are created from this divine light, by this divine light, of this divine light. And I was guided very strongly from within to use the words divine light because it's a very, very neutral container. And so regardless of what realm, spiritual realm or discipline that you're working in, you can relate it. Because I know one thing beyond the shadow of a human doubt is that when you let go and you're open to it and you allow it to rise up from within, it will always lead you to a better place, always. The road might be a little rocky and it might not appear that way at first, but you do get there. Okay, so there's this whole process that people are, that we go through. And now I want to talk about energy work that seems to be outside of the realm of the more organized religions. And that is, for example, there's some people that in yoga, and they talk about the prana, which actually is spoken of in the Eastern religions, but it's considered energy work in the Western Christian world, because they speak of prana. You know, what is that? It's life force energy, you know, which is the same life force energy that quantum mechanics is trying to study and understand. How does that work? You know, so we look at the two and you go, well, one, you know, we're driving the car. One is gas, that makes the car go. And the other one, well, wait, let's look at the motor of how that gas works. And the pistons and the engines firing and the fan belts and the cooling systems. And then somebody else goes, well, wait a minute, let's look at what are the metals that go to make up the engine. And then another group is saying, well, wait a minute, let's look at, well, what are the atoms and molecules that make up the metals? And well, wait a minute, what's underneath that? But we're all looking at different parts of how do we make the car go? And the car go is and where do we want to go in it? That's the human experience. So I'm going to circle back to yoga. There's the prana, and then there's the kundalini yoga. Well, that opens up the whole dialogue about, well, how does energy flow in our body? You know, now energy, divine light, is it different? Well, yeah, we use energy because it's moving and it's kind of biological and it's material. Whereas divine light is energy, but it's also so much more. So are the two interchangeable? No, but could you use them interchangeably? It depends upon the situation, the intention, and what you're wanting to communicate. Okay. And so that would be the difference between divine light and energy work. Energy work, also Reiki, for example, it is a huge field of study. And I remember 35, 40 years ago, Reiki was like, you whispered about it in the corners, and now it's kind of become mainstream. I was speaking with a woman, this was even 15 years ago, in New York, a Reiki master. And, at one of the New York City hospitals, they allowed her in the operating room because her patient was there and wanted her Reiki master there. It's like, okay. So if you look at the society at large as an individual, well, that was a step, along this spiral, the ascension spiral towards unconditional love, learning and understanding what it is to live with unconditional love in very practical ways. So I think if you remember that each person is in their own way, their own part of the path. And sometimes there's one part of you that moves along a little bit faster, and then you run into your own resistance, you run into your own rocks in the road or boulders in the road or obstacles, whatever. That's your stop, look, let, love moment, where you look at what's going on, you let go, look within, and let divine light vibrations flow to transform it into whatever you want it to transform into, so that the rest of you catches up, because it's all about always recalibrating. Now, let me speak into what I mean by recalibrating for just a second. If you look at the different aspects of our human makeup, we have our physical body, but we also have our heart body. That's our emotional body. There's many, many layers to that. There's like your divine heart and human heart, and many, many layers to each of those. You've got your mental body, your intellectual body. You've got your psychic body, your etheric body, your light body. So there's all of these different aspects of you. And if you look at the whole concept of, the holistic mind-body connection, there was the whole placebo effect. Why is it that somebody in a double-blind study has a placebo effect and they get better? Well, because they believe they'll get better. So that has kind of entered more into the mainstream Western medicine line of thought of the placebo effect. Years and years and years ago, it didn't even have a name. And then they gave it a name and it was kind of sloughed away and it was laughed at. And now, well, no, this is part of it, so we need to be aware of it. Okay, so that whole mind body, if you've got all of these old emotions that are shoved down, all of these things that you're hiding from yourself because you're living just in the ego intellect, if you're really tuned in, you'll feel it because your body will tell you, because every part of you has got a vibrational aspect to it. You'll feel into it right away. It'll be a small contraction in your stomach. It'll be a resistance. You do your stop, look, let, love moment, so you can feel into it and see what that is. But if you're not tuned in at all, and you keep shoving it down and going against your nature of infinite unconditional love, and it's going to show up somewhere in your body as a disease of some type. And those who are more enlightened in that whole process, remember the whole cycle, if you're more enlightened in it, you're going to treat the symptoms. That's what our Western medicine does. You're going to treat the symptoms, but you're also going to take a look at, well, what is the cause behind it? Let's leave it up to the doctors that are trained for that to look at what are the causes, But you, as a light worker, you take a look, or as a human being, you take a look at, in my emotional and mental world, can I get back to what's the root cause of this? What's that hidden desire? What's that hidden belief? What's that hidden thing that was going on that my ego intellect had not paid attention to? And when you do that, then you can also do your light work. And that is letting divine light vibrations transform it. And you can ask for anything that you want. The human ego intellect, the idea about who they are, is still too small. And so there's a conscious and subconscious fight or resistance that's going on. And that's where I use the inner critic. But in the course, Meet the Infinite You, I talk about the conscious and subconscious. So when somebody says, well, my mind isn't catching up, it's important to do a stop, look, let, love moment. So you stop, you really take a look at it and say, where is my mind not caught up? Where is the resistance in me? So you let go and specifically ask within, where is the resistance? Is it an old emotional baggage? Is it an old belief that's been in my subconscious? Is it a voice, from my parents or my teachers or my friends or whatever? But really take a look at, what is it that isn't caught up in me? Then once you know what that is, you can take a look at it and give it love and say, okay, this has been a part of me. This has served me because in some way, shape, or form, it was a defense mechanism that I just don't need anymore. So I thank you and I let you go. And you let love flow through it and you let it be transformed into illumination of some way, shape, or form. And so it's really wonderful how we're made, where we can pay attention to the words that we use. My mind isn't caught up yet. Okay. You're telling yourself, you're talking to yourself. That is your divine soul communicating to your human ego intellect. And your divine soul is always communicating to your human ego intellect, always. And the further along the road that you go, and the deeper you do go into the infinite unconditional love of you, then you recognize truly that I am, and we all are, a divine soul co-creating human experiences. And it's a wonderful place to recognize. Divine light flows where your attention goes, and it manifests where your intention stays focused. Okay? So, but you got to work from where you are, not from where you'd like to think you are. Because again, let's go back to you're at point A and you're in the car and you're wanting to go to point B. All right. So if you're here and you want to go here, but you're pretending that you're here, you're going to think this is your road. Well, then, but if that's it, you're not going to end up where you want to go. So you have to go back to, you have to really love yourself enough. And that takes courage. That does take courage. You have to love yourself enough to be where you are, warts, boogers, and all. Be where you actually are. And then work from that point. There is the whole thing of spiritual elitism. My way is better than yours. My way is further along than yours. And it's like, oh, you're missing the point. Tell me where the unconditional love is at. Isn't that? That's conditional love. That's more power games. That's one of the things that we are here to ascend out of, to transform into recognizing that we are in this together. We're in this together. So in one of the other talks, and I'm going to just remind that in one of the other talks, we were talking about cause and effect. You know, so you've got your free choice. So you operate from where you are, point A to point B, and no spiritual bypasses. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back to point A. But you're operating within the larger cause and effect of within your group of people. And then that is operating within the larger cause and effect of humanity, which is operating in the larger cause and effect of the earth, which is operating in the larger cause and effect of the universe. Okay. So this whole idea of spiritual elitism is the absolute antithesis of what infinite unconditional love is. We're in this together. We are in this together. And so it's important to remember where a group is and where you are along this scale. In the course, Meet the Infinite You, I talk about the 3 stages of a spiritual awakening. You're either finding the light, fighting the light, or have full freedom in the light. And as you go deeper in, you know, I use the spiral, you know, so this would be fighting, finding, full freedom. And now you're recalibrating, you're relaxing into it. And maybe you got that other obstacle. You're going to fight against it. You open up the curiosity, you find the light. That's the illumination. And then you have the full freedom. And then, you know, you relax into that. You get used to it. You think I got this down pat. Yeah, baby, I got this down pat. You are totally forgetting that you are an infinite being having a finite human experience. So maybe the next time something comes up from your subconscious, because it's the next part of, you know, changing the paradigm from your human ego intellect. You fight the light, get your curiosity going, stop, look, let love, find it, full freedom. And then this is how, and this is infinite.